The giant lizard opened its mouth full of sharp teeth, biting at my neck without hesitation. Warm, fresh blood gushed out, like a red fountain under the sunlight, instantly staining the sand and weeds beneath my feet. I didn't struggle, didn't scream, didn't even furrow my brow. A strange, almost relieved smile appeared on my face, as if I had finally unloaded the invisible burden on my shoulders. Claire. No. Julian's heart-wrenching roar echoed across the entire island. He lunged forward, his face filled with unprecedented terror. His outstretched fingers were only a few centimeters from the hem of my dress, but he ultimately only grasped a tattered piece of fabric and empty air. Stella collapsed to the ground, her face as pale as paper. A series of piercing screams escaped her throat, her hands covering her face helplessly. Yet she greedily peered through her fingers at everything. The giant lizard bit into my body, dragging me, and swiftly disappeared into the depths of the dense forest, leaving only a bloody trail, like a blood-written road map, pointing to the darkness deep within the jungle. Julian knelt in the blood, his hands trembling as he clutched the fragment of fabric stained with my blood. His eyes stared fixedly in the direction the giant lizard had disappeared, his lips moving but unable to utter a sound. The sunlight reflecting off his gold ring shone on his dazed face, illuminating an unprecedented panic and a trace of belated heartache. "No, this isn't real," he murmured, his voice hoarse as if rubbed with sandpaper. "She's acting. It must be. It's her trick again." He stared blankly at the trail of blood disappearing into the jungle, muttering to himself, "No, this is impossible." His fingers clenched into fists, his nails digging deeply into the flesh of his palms. "She must be faking it, it must be her trick again." Julian's voice trembled. Even he could hear the forced falsehood in it. "Seal off the entire island." He suddenly turned around and roared at the bodyguards behind him. "No one is allowed to enter or leave." His eyes were bloodshot, like those of an injured beast. "Find her. How could those damn lizards take her away?" Stella sat slumped on the ground, watching him in terror. "Brother Julian." "Shut up." Julian interrupted her sharply. "If it weren't for you." His words stopped abruptly, as if something had choked his throat. He didn't dare say the rest of the sentence. "If it weren't for you, how would Claire have become like this? If it weren't for you intruding into the bridal chamber, how would she be on this island? If it weren't for you." Julian suddenly turned and walked towards the helicopter, his back like a shattered piece of glass pieced back together, teetering on the verge of collapse. He didn't dare look back at the bloodstain, didn't dare personally enter the jungle to search. What he feared wasn't the giant lizards, but the truth he might see. 3 days later, GU Corporation Building, the CEO's office. Julian stared blankly at the documents in front of him, but not a single word entered his mind. That glaring bloodstain, like a curse, was branded before his eyes, lingering and unremovable. He abruptly pushed the documents away, got up and walked to the window, overlooking the bustling city below. "Claire, where exactly are you?" In these 3 days he forced himself to immerse himself in work, trying to use busyness to dispel those terrible images. But it was useless. Whenever the night grew quiet, that scene would vividly reappear. The gesture of her unbuttoning her clothes, the body covered in scars, and that soft, almost whispered, "Husband, it's time to eat." Knock, knock, knock. The knocking on the door interrupted his thoughts. Stella carefully pushed the door open and entered, unusually not putting on a pitiful act today. "Brother Julian, are you all right?" she asked softly, a hint of probing in her eyes. "You haven't slept for 3 days." "I'm fine." Julian didn't turn around, his voice as cold as ice. "But you look like—" "I said I'm fine." He suddenly turned around, the fierceness in his eyes instantly silencing Stella. Stella bit her lip and put on a wronged expression. "I'm just worried about you." "Instead of that, you should help me investigate Lizard Island," Julian sneered. "Oh, I forgot. Aren't you most afraid of that kind of place?" Her face instantly paled. "Brother Julian, what's wrong with you? Are you blaming me?" "Blame you for what?" Julian stared intently at her. "Blame you for self-harm? Blame you for forcing me to send Claire to that island? Or blame you for the gloating look in your eyes when you watched her being dragged away by the lizards?" Stella's pupils shrank sharply. "I didn't. I was really worried about sister." Get out. Julian said each word clearly. Before I can't help but kill you. Stella almost scrambled out of the office. Julian slumped heavily in his chair, raising a hand to press his temples. He knew he was not right. Very wrong. Where did the Julian who had always been compliant with Stella, treating her like a treasure, go? He laughed self-deprecatingly, his gaze falling on the phone on the table. Once again he opened his address book and scrolled to the name Claire. Dialing, no one answered. He had called hundreds of times, and the result was the same. Claire. He murmured softly, using a term of endearment he had never used before. You're just punishing me, right? His vision blurred, whether from exhaustion or something else. When you're no longer angry, come back. I promise I'll never. Never what? Never favor Stella again? Never treat her coldly again? Never send her to that damn island? But did any of this still matter? He suddenly stood up, picked up his suit jacket, and strode out of the office. Cancel all my appointments for today, he said to the secretary, heading straight for the elevator. Driving, speeding, arriving at the beach. Facing the blue sea. Julian seemed to have made a decision. Prepare a helicopter, go to Lizard Island immediately, he ordered the person on the other end of the phone. Bring the best search and rescue team. I don't care what method you use, find Claire for me. Julian, we've been searching for 3 days. Keep searching for me. Julian almost roared. Dig 3 feet into the ground and find her for me. After the helicopter took off, Julian closed his eyes, looking at the city below gradually shrinking. He seemed to hear her voice again. I won't have any expectations of you, Julian. That was the last thing she said to him before the wedding. At the time he thought it was funny, that she was pretending to be aloof. Now that he thought about it, it was clearly despair. As the helicopter approached the island, Julian's heart beat faster and faster. Julian, we found. What did you find? Julian looked up sharply, his voice urgent. Some fragments of clothing. And bloodstains. The Lizard Island search team's helicopter roared as it landed at Julian's private airfield in the setting sun. Julian's legs felt like lead, each step incredibly heavy, his heart pounding rapidly like a war drum. The captain was covered in sweat, his eyes darting around, avoiding eye contact. He handed over a clear evidence bag. Julian. We only found these. Julian's hand trembled so much he could barely hold the small bag. Inside were several pieces of blood-soaked clothing fragments and an earring covered in dirt. It was the style Claire wore at their wedding. The body. His voice was dry as sandpaper. Where is she? We searched for 3 days. Every place on the island we could go. Nothing. Except for bloodstains, nothing. Julian's eyes widened. He grabbed the captain's collar. Are you fucking kidding me? How can a living person just disappear into thin air? Julian. Komodo dragons can eat everything clean. Julian's hand released its grip. He was struck as if by lightning, and his knees buckled, sending him kneeling to the ground. No body meant no definitive proof that Claire was dead. This should have left a glimmer of hope. But how could he deceive himself after witnessing everything he had? The night was as dark as ink. The study in the Gu family villa was brightly lit. Julian's eyes were bloodshot, his tie was loose and stubble covered his chin. He stared intently at the Lizard Island surveillance footage on the computer screen. In the footage, Claire, on her first day being sent to the island, cowered in the corner in terror, trembling and unable to close her eyes. The scene shifted. On the 3rd day, Claire tried to escape from a Komodo dragon attack, scratched her leg, bleeding, but gritted her teeth and didn't cry. On the 7th day, she learned to use branches to drive away approaching lizards, and the fear on her face gradually turned to vigilance. On the 15th day, she was no longer startled into screaming by the hissing of the lizards, and her eyes began to become numb. On the 20th day, bang! Julian slammed his fist on the table, knocking over a cup, spilling coffee everywhere. Claire, this is all I did to you. His voice choked, almost unable to speak. The image froze on Claire's figure curled up on a rock. Rain washed over her scarred arms. She stared blankly into the distance, like a broken doll. Knock, knock, knock. A knock sounded, and Stella pushed the door open, holding a glass of warm milk. Brother Julian, it's late, you should rest. Julian turned sharply, his gaze like a knife stabbing towards Stella. Rest? Claire hasn't been found. How can I rest? Stella was frightened by his gaze and took a step back, biting her lower lip in grievance. I know you're worried, but you haven't slept in 3 days. Don't put on a show of caring about me. Julian roared. If you hadn't stabbed yourself, would Claire be like this now? Tears immediately welled up in Stella's eyes. She sobbed. Brother Julian, why are you saying this? I was really desperate that day. I was afraid sister wouldn't let me stay. Stay. Julian sneered. He walked up to Stella, his gaze as cold as if it had just been pulled from an ice cellar. Then tell me, which did you destroy? Your uterus or your ovaries? Which one did you say that day? Stella's expression froze instantly. What? What do you mean? I've already checked your medical records, Stella. You didn't injure any organs that could affect fertility. Your wound didn't even penetrate the abdominal cavity. Stella's face turned deathly pale. No, it's not. Get out. Julian snatched the milk cup from her hand and smashed it against the wall. Glass shards flew everywhere. Get out before I can't stop myself from killing you. Stella scrambled out of the study. Julian locked the door heavily, pacing the room like a trapped beast. He walked to the window, gazing at the dark night sky, and suddenly punched the glass. Blood streamed down through his fingers. Claire, if you're still alive, please come back. He murmured. I was wrong. The glass reflected his haggard face and desperate eyes, the face of a completely broken man. The next morning, he rushed into Claire's walk-in closet like a madman, rummaging through every piece of clothing she had ever worn, inhaling the scent that had long since faded. In the study, the bedroom, even every corner of the kitchen, he searched for traces of her existence like a treasure hunt. He searched the entire house like a maniac, finally discovering a carefully wrapped diary under the bed in their marital bedroom. On the cover in gold lettering was written, "To my future self." Julian's hand trembled uncontrollably as he carefully opened the first page. Julian rushed into our marital bedroom like a madman, a place he had once avoided. Everything in the room remained as it was when I left. Even the vase of withered roses hadn't been changed. His fingers trembled as he stroked the perfume bottle on the vanity, the bottle still bearing the imprint of my fingertips. Claire, where are you? His voice was hoarse and unrecognizable. He opened the wardrobe, and a faint scent of gardenias wafted out, my usual fragrance. Julian suddenly knelt on the floor, like a drowning man grasping at the last straw, burying his face deeply in my clothes, greedily inhaling the scent that had long since dissipated. Just as he was getting up, his knee bumped into a protrusion under the bed. It was an exquisite wooden box, sealed with moisture-proof tape, clearly carefully hidden there. His heart pounded, as if he sensed something. The moment he opened the box, Julian's breath hitched for a second. A light blue diary, with my handwriting on the cover. To my future self. His hand trembled uncontrollably, almost unable to hold the diary, which wasn't heavy. The first page was the day we first met. I even remembered the color of the shirt he wore that day down to the last detail. I saw Julian today. He didn't seem to notice me at all. His eyes were always on Stella. It's okay, I'm not in a hurry. Julian's heart felt like it had been squeezed hard. He turned to the next page. Julian likes Americano, 3 sugars, I remember. A simple sentence, yet he remembered that he did receive a cup of coffee like that in the office that day, and had thought it was from his secretary. It rained today. Julian didn't bring an umbrella. I wanted to give him mine, but Stella took it first. She leaned exaggeratedly into his arms in front of me. I pretended not to see. Julian worked late tonight. I sent him a late-night snack, but didn't dare knock on his door. I just left it at his office door. I don't know if he ate it. I hope he's not too tired. Page after page, all were records of his likes, habits, and the little things I had done for him without his knowledge. Today is our engagement day. Julian doesn't seem happy. Stella deliberately said at the wedding planning company that the color red reminded her of blood. Julian immediately changed it to the blue theme she liked, without asking my opinion at all. It's okay as long as he's happy. Julian's fingers gripped the diary tightly, his knuckles white. Today Stella came to my office to make trouble again. saying in front of all my colleagues that I was seducing Julian, deliberately stealing her man. I didn't refute, because I knew Julian wouldn't believe my explanation. I only hope that after we're married, Julian will look at me more. Each page was like a knife, slowly slicing Julian's heart. Those grievances I never mentioned in front of him, the pain I silently endured, the tears I swallowed so as not to make things difficult for him, were all laid bare before him. I know Julian is marrying me only because of my father's company, but I really love him so much, I'm willing to wait for him to see the good in me someday. Julian's tears fell silently on the diary, blurring my handwriting. The last page was written the night before our wedding. Tomorrow is my wedding with Julian. I'm so nervous and so excited. I've always dreamed of wearing that white dress, standing by his side, becoming his wife. I love him. I will love him well, take care of him, and be with him for the rest of my life. Julian, I hope someday you can read these words and know how much I love you. Julian's tears could no longer be stopped. He cried like a child, holding the diary and collapsing to the ground. Claire. So this is how you loved me. What have I done? I pushed you into hell. His fist slammed into the ground, knuckles breaking, blood staining the carpet red. He suddenly thought of something and frantically flipped to the end of the diary, where there were still a few blank pages. In the corner of the last page, there was a small line of writing, as if soaked in tears. Julian, if there is a next life, please don't love me again. He held the diary, his whole body as if drained of all strength, kneeling heavily on the ground. Claire's handwriting was clearly so delicate, yet it felt as if every stroke was a knife, carving bloody marks on his heart. So she loved him so much. So she did so much for him, yet he never noticed. His throat felt as if something was blocking it, the pain almost making him unable to breathe. I was wrong, Claire. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Regret washed over him like a tide. He didn't even know how much he loved her, until he lost her. The bedroom door was gently pushed open, Stella wearing a pale blue dress that was almost identical to Claire's, her hairstyle also deliberately imitating Claire's. Julian, I made you some tea, your favorite dragon well. Her voice was deliberately soft, mimicking Claire's tone, her expression innocent and pitiful. Julian looked up, his eyes as cold as if he were looking at a corpse. He slowly stood up, his gaze scanning Stella's outfit inch by inch, a chilling smile appearing on the corner of his mouth. Do you think you can become her just by wearing her clothes? Stella's smile froze on her face, the teacup in her hand trembling slightly. Julian, I don't understand what you're saying. Take off her clothes. Julian's voice was like it crawled out of an ice cave, each word piercingly cold. I'm not. I said take Claire's clothes off. Them. Now. He suddenly waved his hand, the teacup flying out and hitting the wall, shards scattering, tea painting a ferocious mark on the wall. Stella was so frightened that she took 2 steps back, her face pale. Are you crazy? Julian. Julian strode forward and grabbed her collar, almost spitting out the words between his teeth. Yes, I'm crazy, because I lost the woman I love on Lizard Island, all because of you, you vicious woman. The sound of tearing fabric was particularly harsh in the room. Stella screamed, frantically covering her torn collar. Julian, calm down, I know you miss her, but it's not my fault. Julian sneered, his eyes filled with mockery. Do you know, Stella, I checked your medical records. You didn't even damage your uterus that day, not even the peritoneum was pierced. Stella's eyes widened, her pupils contracted sharply. What do you mean? I mean you're a liar. Julian roared. You hurt yourself to sow discord between Claire and me. That's not true. I was just too emotional that day. Emotional? Julian smiled sarcastically. Then how do you explain the phone records of you secretly contacting the watchman? Stella's face turned pale in an instant, as if her dirtiest secret had been exposed on the spot. You investigated me. Did you think I would let Claire disappear for nothing? I will dig out everyone who harmed her. Julian's eyes were bloodshot, like those of a bloodthirsty beast. From today on, I'm taking back everything I gave you. The apartment, the car, the credit cards, and the Gu family shares. You won't get a single cent. Stella's lips trembled, and tears fell in big drops. Julian, how can you do this to me? We've known each other since we were little. Shut up. Don't call me Julian. Julian roared. Do you know how Claire lived on the island? Do you know how it felt for her to be bitten all over by those giant lizards? Stella was so scared that she stepped back, accidentally tripped over a corner of the table, and fell to the ground. Julian looked down at her, his eyes filled with cold hatred. You don't know? It doesn't matter, you will soon. What? What do you mean? Stella's voice trembled almost inaudibly. I have prepared a special gift for you. Julian gave a chilling smile. Tomorrow morning, I will send you to a special place. No, you can't. Stella shook her head in horror, a flash of understanding and fear in her eyes. No, you can't send me there, please, Julian. What's the matter, scared? Julian sneered. Don't worry, I won't be as despicable as you. You only need to stay there for half a month, unlike Claire who stayed there for a whole month. I'm not going. You can't do this to me. Stella screamed, her voice as shrill as a dying bird. Julian watched her hysterically with cold eyes, finally seeing her true colors. So Claire had been living in the same room with such a vicious woman all these years. So the person he had been protecting was a poisonous snake. Security, take her out. Julian ordered coldly. Don't let me see her again. 2 security guards rushed in and dragged Stella away, ignoring her struggles and screams. Julian stood there, listening to Stella's hysterical curses and pleas for mercy gradually fading away. Julian threw Stella out of the Gu family, but found that the emptiness was still in his heart, like a bottomless black hole, devouring everything. He began to frantically flip through my diary, searching page after page for my past preferences, like a desperate drowning man grasping at a last straw. She likes cherry blossoms, loves to go to Japan in spring to see them. He muttered to himself, and the next day bought a ticket to Tokyo. Standing beneath the cherry trees laden with pink blossoms, he held up his phone to take pictures, then turned around. Claire, look at these cherry blossoms, aren't they beautiful? Behind him was no one. He went to the Eiffel Tower I had dreamed of, standing at the top and shouting, Claire, I brought you here. Can you see it? Tourists looked at this crazed Oriental man with strange eyes. I once wrote in my diary that I wanted to ride a gondola in Venice, so he really went, sitting alone in the small boat, smiling at the empty seat. Are you cold? Do you want my coat? Every corner of our home was piled with things he had bought. My favorite perfumes, lipsticks, dresses, shoes, each item brand new, waiting for an owner who would never return. Claire, do you like this dress? He asked the air, then answered himself. Like it? Then we'll wear it to dinner tonight. He started talking to me, ordering 2 meals at restaurants, buying 2 tickets at the cinema, and then diligently recounting the day's events when he got home, as if I had been by his side the whole time. The servants gossiped in private. Julian's gone mad. He talks to the air every day, as if Claire were still alive. In his office, my photos were hung everywhere, each one carefully wiped clean, without a speck of dust. He began to suffer from insomnia, holding my pajamas, sobbing like a child. Claire, I'm sorry, I was wrong, please come back. On the first day of every month, he would return to that island, bringing my favorite flowers, placing them where the bloodstains had long since dried. He knelt on that patch of earth, his forehead pressed to the ground, tears soaking the soil. Claire, if you can hear me, please give me a chance, I'll do anything. The giant lizards on the island watched the man who visited every month from afar, already accustomed to his presence, no longer as wary as they once were. I love you, Claire. I've always loved you. I was just too stupid and blind to see my own heart. He cried, pounding his chest. Julian's secretary whispered to the new assistant. Don't mind him, he's been like this for 6 months, living entirely in his own world. He began to dream of me. In my dreams I was wearing a wedding dress, smiling at him. He reached out to grab me, but could only grasp a handful of air. Then he would wake up, his face covered in tears. I'm willing to trade my life to bring her back. God in heaven, are you listening? I'll give anything, just please bring her back. He held at the night sky. I once wrote in my diary that I wanted to see the aurora borealis, so he went to Alaska, sitting alone in the frozen wilderness, gazing up at the dancing green lights in the sky. Claire, look, this is the aurora you wanted to see. Is it beautiful? He held up his phone, taking photo after photo, as if he really wanted to show them to me. Every day, he would do something I had once wanted to do but he had refused, as if he were repaying a debt that could never be fully paid. Too late, he said, painfully covering his face. I knew too late. Julian's world was filled only with Claire's shadow. Claire, what do you think of this design? He smiled at the empty office, as if he could truly hear a response. The company's stock price plummeted like a cliff, even more tragically than the day he found Claire's diary. It's okay, he whispered to the empty space beside him. We don't need such a big company. Didn't you say you wanted to open a small cafe? The board of directors strongly urged him to receive psychological treatment, but he calmly signed his resignation letter. He's crazy, departing executives whispered behind his back, talking to the air all day long, as if that dead woman is still alive. Julian moved back to the empty villa, dismissed all the servants, leaving only countless of Claire's belongings and memories. What do you want to eat today, Claire? He clumsily stir-fried vegetables in the kitchen, sweat dripping from his forehead into the sizzling pan. The white dress that Claire loved the most when she was alive was carefully hung by him in the most conspicuous place in the wardrobe, and was gently dusted off every day. This dress looks best with your complexion. He stroked the hem of the dress obsessively, his eyes as gentle as if he were looking at the most precious treasure in the world. He began to cut his arm with a blade, each wound carved neatly, as if completing a sacred ritual. Does it hurt? He whispered to the non-existent Claire. It must not hurt as much as the injuries you suffered on the island, right? Fresh blood dripped from his fingertips, gathering into a small pool of dazzling red on the white tile. I want to atone, he murmured to the air. But I can't ever repay this debt. He began to dream of Claire frequently. In his dreams, she always wore that blood-stained rag, silently looking at him, without saying a word. I miss you, Julian cried out in his dream, reaching out his hand. Why don't you take me with you? Claire in the dream only shook her head sadly, then turned and walked towards the dark jungle, never looking back. Wait for me. He woke up suddenly, realizing that his pillow was soaked with tears. The scars on Julian's arm became more and more numerous, like some kind of terrible work of art, crisscrossing, shocking. Not enough, he looked at his haggard, ghost-like reflection in the mirror. Far from enough. The wall of his bedroom was covered with Claire's photos, from her girlhood to her wedding day, each one framed, like some kind of twisted shrine. Good morning, Claire. The first thing he did every morning was to kiss the largest photo on the wall. Where shall we go today? He began to wear Claire's clothes, although they were so small that they almost suffocated him. They gave him a morbid comfort. That way you can hug me, right? He smiled at the bizarre figure in the mirror. The news of the eventual bankruptcy of Goose Group caused an uproar in the business world. Everyone said Julian was crazy. Being with Claire is worth it, he said softly, watching the last of his employees leave. He threw all the letters that Stella sent from the mental hospital into the fireplace without opening them, watching them turn to ashes. Dirty things, he said coldly, with a disgust he had never shown before. The last friend who tried to help him was kicked out of the house. Julian completely isolated himself from the outside world. I don't need their pity, he explained to Claire's photo. Having you is enough. He began to sit in the garden night after night, gazing up at the stars. Claire, which star are you on? His voice was hollow and distant. One late night, he suddenly understood what he should do, and the thought brought him his first genuine smile. Wait for me. He gently kissed Claire's photo. I'm coming to find you. He piloted his private plane toward the almost forgotten Lizard Island, his eyes gleaming with a near-fanatical light. Soon, Julian murmured to himself. Soon I'll see you, Claire. When he stepped onto the land filled with shadowy memories, the island was deathly still, with only the distant hissing reminding him of the Komodo dragons. I'm back, he smiled at the air. I won't abandon you again this time. He followed the long-dried trail of blood, finally arriving at the place where Claire had last disappeared. Found you. His voice was as light as a feather. Several Komodo dragons warily watched the intruder, their rough tongues tasting the air. Do you remember Claire? Julian asked softly. The woman you took away? The Komodo dragons emitted low hisses, slowly approaching the human, emanating a familiar scent. She was my wife. Tears welled up in Julian's eyes. I personally delivered her to you. The largest Komodo dragon crawled closer, its dark, shiny eyes fixed on Julian's every move. You know her, don't you? Julian squatted down, gazing at the Komodo dragon almost obsessively. You left scars on her. He began to take off his clothes one by one, his movements solemn as if performing a sacred ritual. I've come to atone, he said softly. In the same way. His toned body was exposed to the scorching sun, his arms and chest covered in self-inflicted wounds, gruesome and morbid. Look, he showed off his wounds, his eyes fanatical. I've become accommodating too. The Komodo dragons were attracted by the scent of blood, getting closer and closer, their mouths secreting viscous saliva. Come on, he opened his arms, welcoming the largest Komodo dragon as if embracing a lover. Take me to see Claire. The Komodo dragon opened its mouth filled with sharp teeth, its rough tongue licking at the air. Don't be afraid, Julian smiled, a light of near deliverance flickering in his eyes. I won't resist. He slowly knelt down, exposing his neck to the Komodo dragon, like some primitive sacrifice. Claire, I found you. At the moment the sharp teeth pierced his skin, Julian smiled. This time we'll go together. Blood splattered on the sand, staining the surrounding weeds and pebbles red. Under the sunlight, the smile on Julian's face gradually solidified, and the light in his eyes slowly faded away. Wait for me. This was his last whisper, disappearing into the Komodo dragon's roar. He had a twisted, expectant smile on his face, like a child who had finally found home. Claire, I found you. The voice was as light as a snowflake landing. See, I've become accommodating too. His eyes flashed with a light that shouldn't belong to the living. The Komodo dragon's cold vertical pupils reflected his relaxed face. He closed his eyes, without any resistance. The sound of sharp teeth piercing flesh was like a rusty knife scraping sandpaper. He smiled. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth, staining his last smile red. Death came quickly like a sigh. Sorry I'm late. This was his soul's last whisper. Months later, an exploration team found some tattered clothing and unrecognizable bones on the island. Identification results. Julian, male, 32 years old. When this news reached the asylum, Stella was staring blankly out the window. Upon hearing Julian's name, her expressionless face suddenly twitched. A cloudy tear slid from her empty eyes. No one knew if it was regret or resentment. She wiped away the tear with her finger and tasted it. Salty. Then she suddenly giggled, laughing like a child.